All right. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about The Fires of Heaven, Book 5 of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I should say by this point in the series, I'm basically going to go straight into spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, go read the book, then come back. I hope if you've committed time to read all the way up through 4, that you'll keep going and read 5. I do know some people get burned out of the series, and for me, The Wheel of Time is one of those series that I recommend to very specific people because it is a very long commitment to make to read all of these books. I do think it is worth it through the entire of the series. I think the series as a whole is really, really amazing, but there are some parts in the books that can be slow and drag, and that can sometimes take people out and make people not want to keep going and reading. But hopefully you will keep going. Hopefully you've read this book and you'll keep progressing beyond, and we'll be able to talk about it. So let's get started on the positives of this book. I think that this book does a good job with, I think Rand's story and Matt's story are the most interesting of this book. I really like the development Matt gets with the battle tactics, and this I love the formation of the Band of the Red Hand. That is one of I really enjoy their dynamic, especially moving. I'm not going to spoil anything, but especially moving into the future books. I'm very excited. I forgot that they like Talmanis gets introduced here and they officially get started, and I'm excited to see and talk about them moving forward beyond this book. I think that excuse me. I think that one thing in this book that's really well done, and it's been building up throughout the series up to this point, is the talk of the madness of channeling the male half of the power. And this is where we really get to see it start to take hold of Rand, of like him wandering around the battlefield in the end, and like all these elements and voices in his head. And it's so good. It's like, because I feel like in a normal book series, it would just be this snap. And I feel like that's what is kind of like Jordan's playing against, is madness is not just this moment you wake up and you just murder everyone around you. It's this slow process of like slowly breaking down a person and like breaking down their defenses and their mental capacity and what can happen. And we get to see the toll that's starting to take on Rand a lot in this book. And I really, really enjoyed that a lot. I think that Nynaeve, in this book, Nynaeve and Elaine's story, while not the most interesting, and I'll get into that, is more interesting than book 4. And I feel like Nynaeve is starting to... This is where she starts to become a character that I can root for a little bit more and get behind. There's definitely still elements that I don't like in this book, but I'm if I'm remembering right moving forward, and this is the point where I'm like, yes, okay, we finally got past this like slog of okay, now you're starting to become more interesting, and I'm excited to see where you do. The one scene that I really enjoy, that I feel like not as many people maybe enjoy, and a lot of people I discussed this book with, my friends that I discussed this with, didn't really like the scene as much, but I really enjoyed the scene with Moraine and Lanfear at the end. I definitely think we could have used a little bit more setup for Lanfear's jealousy up to that point, but the sacrifice Moraine does is very satisfying, and I love it. I love it, and there's so much foreshadowing for it throughout the book that I love. The scene itself is not like perfect by any means, but like the consequences of that And the reason she has to do that, because Rand basically refuses to kill a woman, is great. Um, the consequences with Lan and Rand basically being like, yeah, women should not love us. We are terrible for them, is very interesting, and I love that. It's not a healthy dynamic, but it's a really interesting dynamic, and can cause some good conflict moving forward. I also really like the. I think one of the strongest scenes at the end there is the scene with Sulin breaking her spears, and the consequences of that, and Rand basically choosing to hold the Maidens of the Spear out of battle because he doesn't want. He's okay sending men to fight, but not women to fight, and kind of that element of this, basically kind of showing him like, we are warriors too, and you're being a hypocrite and taking our honor away from us by treating us like we're not. I think that's super good. The Ravine fight, I really enjoy. I think it's probably the best Forsaken fight done up to this point, especially when we get the perspective of Moghedien and Nynaeve mixed in with that fight. It's exciting to see these elements at play, and the a little bit of bait and switch with the death as Ravine springs his trap on Rand when they first come through to Caemlyn. But the Balefire reversing elements and turning back time is interesting, and I'm interested to see. I'm sure some people whose first time through will be like, oh, well, that's kind of a cheap way to do it, but because I'm pretty sure I had that same reaction. It's like, okay. I mean, it was kind of cool to have that. That's been set up, so it's not that bad, but I'm excited for it moving forward. So, all right. I think let's jump into. That's a lot of time talking about the positive. Let's talk about the criticisms of this book. I think this book is a little bit slower. There's elements that are a bit faster, but a little bit slower than the previous book. The previous book was definitely really slow at the beginning, the Shadow Rising, but after you get past that beginning section, it's like all speed ahead. This book has just a lot of little slow elements, especially with the circus with Elaine and Nynaeve. I think that some of those elements could have been pushed maybe earlier into the book and broken up the traveling, with Rand and Mat and the Aiel all leaving the Waste. And I think the circus maybe could, like, most of the circus stuff could have came a little bit earlier, and then the concluding part could have been building up little, chapters broken up a bit more, so that we aren't getting the circus kind of in like the second, like 2/3 of the way through the book. There were parts of it that I really enjoyed, though. Like I said, compared to the last book with Tanchico, I honestly could not care less about Nynaeve and Elaine's journey through Tanchico. But there were elements that I really liked. I really liked us getting to see Galad again and how he's with the White Cloaks. I thought that was cool. And, getting to spend time with Tom and stuff like that was also interesting. There were elements of the fighting between Elaine and Nynaeve that I just was like, please stop. Like, I get it, they're cooped up and stuff like that. I think there's scenes that maybe could have been cut down in those chapters and given, either made the book a little bit shorter or given those times to other stuff. This isn't necessarily a criticism, because I know this is going to happen through a lot of the books moving forward, but it makes me sad. No Perrin this book, no Fael this book. I knew this was coming. My friends did not. But it made... I loved Perrin's story through book 4, and I think it's okay that we don't get him here, because that lets us, sit with it a little bit of like his story is kind of concluded, or not story overall, but like that part of his journey is kind of concluded in book 4, and we're still continuing with the characters whose journeys are progressing as we go through in this book, book 5. Those are the biggest criticisms. I mean, there's the little weird thing with Elaine and Tom that I didn't really like. It was kind of just out of the blue and didn't really do anything for the story. There was a few of those like didn't really do anything for the story. I liked getting to see Matt's combat prowess, but we don't get to see much of the fighting with the Aiel and the Aiel and like Shido Aiel with Couladin and stuff like that. Like Couladin is an off-screen death, which I think is ironic because he had built himself up as so important that I think it's kind of funny that he doesn't get even the page space to be. He's just killed randomly in the battle, and like it just shows how like unimportant he was overall to the pattern. Whereas like the big players like Ravine and Lanfear and stuff like that are really the big players that we get to see and what happens. But I definitely think that the fighting could have used a little bit more, maybe a couple more perspectives, like Lan, some of the other Aiel, like playing around with those perspectives a bit and getting to see more fronts of the battle and see how Matt's plan is working. Because we get to see his prowess in his own battle when he kind of gets drugged back in. But it would have been cool to see like how his plan really turns the tides, and it makes it so it's almost like crucial that he sticks around because of how capable he is at warfare. So that would have been cool to see. Other than that, like, pretty solid book overall. A lot of stuff happens. There's almost like a triple conclusion at the end because we get like the battle with Couladin, we get the and the Shido, and we get the battle with Lanfear, and then we get the battle with Ravine. So there's almost like this back to back conclusion going on, and there's definitely this element of like, oh well, we should be wrapping up soon. Oh wait, there's still like a ton of time left on this book. I thought it was kind of interesting, but I could see how it might upset a little bit of people. Like, if it definitely felt like it kept going past the conclusion. But I like the pieces that it brought to a show. And Rand lost his teacher, so we'll see. I thought that's super interesting, and I like that little like epilogue. Like, the epilogues in this book and the prologues in these books are like really good at setting up pieces and like cliffhangers for the series. I really think Jordan does an excellent job with those. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm interested to know what other people think about this book in particular. I'm going to keep going through the Wheel of Time, and we are going to keep doing, if you haven't watched, we have been doing discussions, drink and discuss, on each of the books, and we're going to do them all the way through the entirety of the series, all the way through book 14, and I think we're even going to do the prequel book, New Spring. So keep an eye out for those. We go into a lot more detail in those than I do in these reviews. These are kind of supposed to be quick, easy to watch, in a short amount of time in one sitting, whereas those are more couple hours sometime discussion on really every detail and giving you guys more perspectives than just mine on the series. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you around in the future. Leave some comments down below. We can talk about this book. I'm excited to get some more Wheel of Time content out because I do really enjoy this series, and I'm very much getting very excited to keep reading. I got to the end of this book, and I was just so pumped to get to book 6, but I had to hold off because I got to let everyone else that I'm reading with keep up with me, because if I'm not careful, I will read through the series in like a couple months and just leave everyone behind, and they'll never be able to catch up. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time.